It's the worst of the CBC from March 2nd, 2020, the show where I watch the CBC so you don't have to. All right. It's amazing. After a week in Alberta, getting a lot accomplished, it's still the same CBC I left. And I don't mean like the same instruction. No, it's the exact same episode that's been on for the last 3.5 weeks now, which is coronavirus, wet'suwet'en, coronavirus, wet'suwet'en, coronavirus, wet'suwet'en. So the first 12 minutes are coronavirus, and I think it's safe to say that political correctness is getting people killed. You see this, the Rotterdam cases we talked about, political correctness. They're not talking about the grooming gangs or the Pakistani, mostly, rape gangs. You also see this now with the coronavirus, where because of political correctness, it is leading to people dying. Let's take out the sort of the Genesis disease. Let's take that to bed of it. People will say it's created in a chemical weapons lab as a means to shut down protests, or it created in a wet market because that's a great place for a disease to start. Okay, either one could be true. That's not important right now. But what everyone needs to kind of understand here is, I think we can all fairly say that the Chinese government and the Iranian government are not to be trusted. So these are the two major epicenters in the outbreak. China, we've seen videos. In Iran, we see videos of them licking the shrines at Qom. So Qom is like the holiest city in the Shiite. It's like the Vatican City for Shiites, and they're not closing it down. They basically have a bunch of religious radicals licking the shrine, saying, because we believe we're not going to get coronavirus, and they're getting coronavirus. They said they have about 1,500 cases. However, Italy says 1,700. Iran's more likely around 30,000 than 1,500. So there's a lot of lying. But my point here is that the disease, we might have had it contained earlier, and we've seen a spike because we weren't using the real numbers, and everyone knew it. There's a great scene in the Chernobyl HBO series recently where it's about the disaster, and they get the Germans, the Germans to make a machine to sort of help them clean up, and then the machine just breaks damn it, they gave them the propaganda number, not the real number. And this is the coronavirus. The WHO is taking the Chinese government and the Iranian government's numbers for who's infected, what's happening, and then they're reporting that as facts. And Canada is using those WHO numbers, even though we all know for a fact that the Chinese and the Iranian governments are lying to us. We know this. There is not a reason. There's no good reason to trust any of these guys in either of these two governments. They're two of the most evil organizations on the planet with a chronic history of lying about things that hurt their image. So why are we taking these numbers seriously? I will contend that the failure to contain the virus, the failure to enact initial quarantines, we're still not shutting down flights from Iran and China. 3 Canadians just showed up with coronavirus coming out of Iran. And we're not shutting this down because we're taking the propaganda numbers and we don't want to seem racist or whatever for trying to shut down the spread of a disease that's now primarily coming out of China and Iran. If it was coming out of Italy, which is the third largest thing, I guarantee you we would be shutting down flights from Italy. And I would be totally in support of it. Nothing against Italians, but if there's a major disease coming out of Italy, you close your borders to Italy for the time being and see what happens. If that happened to Canada, other countries do it to us, I'd understand. Okay, then the wet'suwet'en thing, they've just given now that the hereditary chiefs, the minority, have been given all the power. Why do we negotiate with extremists? We've taken the power out of the hands of the wet'suwet'en people and put it in the hands of a few dissident hereditary chiefs and a bunch of radical environmentalists. Good job, Canada. Now, the biggest omission of the day is, and maybe the media covered this before, but the media should be covering this like it's super coronavirus. It's Justin Trudeau's propaganda minister, Minister of Truth, Stéphane Gilbert, the former radical environmentalist turned media person. He's still on the regulating the media. So there was a pushback when they first said regulation, and then they kind of said no, but if you watch what I covered, they clearly said, yes, we're still going to do it. And now they're ramping it back up, and now the media is running cover for them. So again, this is why we're in Alberta talking about the importance of independent media. They want to it's a 3-pronged approach to control the media. And I've talked about this as soon as Trudeau got elected. First one, candy to his friends. You offer a $600 million, now $1 billion bailout to friendly media companies. You want to be my friend? Here's some candy. So you're more likely to side with Trudeau because he's giving you money. Second, you go after detractors, right? Carrot, stick. You throw lawsuits, use lawfare against True North Media, Rebel Media, and whoever else will come under the path. And then the third thing here, step 3, which is what we're on right now, is the need to monopolize information wholesale. So that is regulation of social media. It's the regulation of these new upstart sites to sort of prevent them from coming in to fill the void in the market, that even if you knock out True North and Rebel, something will fill that void unless you apply some licensing standards to make sure that the only people doing that would be pushing the same narrative you want them to in the first place. And also you'll ramp up on hate speech and just not the sort of National Telegraph Twitter account or any of the other online media sources. It would be yours would be the next thing, because I'm of the opinion that everyone is their own little media company if you put your mind to it, guys. So the fact they don't call that. Oh, also, they're not talking about the fact that Wally Solomon's suing me. But that's just fun times. So, yes, if you want to help with that, feel free to donate to our legal defense fund. If you like the show, you can support us on Patreon and PayPal. And if you like the CBC, you could be one of 4 Canadians that watch the CBC. So if you really like the CBC, you can join me, your grandmother in her hospital bed, and your grandfather's cat in making up the future audience of the Canadian Broadcasting Centre, which today, because it's the same thing, it's getting a 10 out of 10 on the Rosemary Barton scale until I don't almost die watching it. It gets a 10 out of 10.